Welcome to Batik Cast, and our topic today is Right Verified. I am Sebastian Anak Jai. I am the host for today Batik Cast, and we will present based on our research, which is about awareness and understanding of fundamental rights and freedoms among UUM students. To conduct this study, we use a quantitative research approach involving 100 respondents from UUM through structured questionnaire. So on screen, we can see our independent variable and also dependent variable. So the purpose of this variable is to analyze not only constitutional awareness but also student perceptions towards institutions, democratic values, and the practical realities surrounding constitutional rights in Malaysia. And before we moving into the core findings, in section 1, we present the demographic of profile of the respondents. First, we have gender, which is the findings show a perfectly balance between male and female. And next, we have the age group. Most respondents fall within the 21st to 23 years old. And next is ethnicity. In terms of ethnicity, 75 respondents are Malay, and followed by a smaller proportion of Chinese, Indians, Bumiputra, Sabah and Sarawak. And although these minority groups are still represented, the dispersion remain heavily concentrated towards the Malay respondent. And next, we have the academic background, which is respondent mainly come from COB, CAS and Colgis. This creating a relatively balanced academic distributions. And for the year of study, most respondents are second year students. And in addition, more than 66% of respondents have taken this subject to politics and Malaysian studies. And this academic exposure may significantly influence constitutional awareness among the respondents. Students who exposed to governance, politics, or Malaysian study are generally more familiar with the democratic concept, constitutional rights, and civic issues. Overall, section 1 show that the sample is relatively balanced in terms of gender, academic background. However, there is still noticeable concentration in the ethnicity and academic level, which should be considered carefully when interpreting the findings. We'll move into the section 2 and section 3, which will be presented by my panel, Ahmed Zafri.
Okay, thank you Sebastian. Now we move to the section 2, which is the awareness of right. Question 2, awareness of constitutional rights. The findings show that 53 respondents strongly agree, while 14 respondents agree that they understand their constitutional right. Overall, 93 respondents demonstrate positive awareness regarding rights under the federal constitutions. This indicates a very strong level of constitutional awareness among the UUM students. The findings suggest the most respondents are familiar with the concept of constitutional right, likely influenced by academic exposure, civic educations, and public discussion through the media and social platforms. However, it is important to understand that this data is self-reported. This means respondents are reporting based on their own perceptions of understandings rather than through the objective constitutional testing. As a result, students may recognize constitutional terms and principles generally, but may not necessarily post deep or detailing legal understanding. In other words, awareness appears strong, but the actual depth of the constitutional literacy may still vary among the respondents. Overall, section 2 demonstrates strong constitutional awareness among respondents. However, the finding also revealed a possible gap between general awareness and deeper constitutional understanding. Next, we move to the section 3, which focus on the legal protection and trust in the institutional. Question 4. Equal protection regardless of background. The findings show that 83 respondents agree that there is equal protection regardless of background. This suggests that most students believe the constitutional principle of equality is reflected within the Malaysia legal frameworks. In general, respondents appear to recognize equality before as a law and important democratic principle. However, the presence of the natural and disagreements response also indicate that not all respondents fully believe equality is consistently experienced in the practice. This may reflect concerns surrounding unequal treatment, concern to the social status, economic background, ethnicity or other structural factor within society. So, while the legal principle itself is recognized, confidence in real-world implementation appears slightly more uncertain. In summary, respondents generally show confidence in the legal protection and institutional system. However, some uncertainty still exists regarding the consistency of equality and enforcement in the real-life situations. Now, we proceed to the Shah Ehsan for the Section 4 and Section 5 to focusing on freedom of expressions, democracy and abuse of power.
Alright, thank you Amir Zafri. Now we move to Section 4, Freedom of Expression. Question 1. Freedom to express opinion. The findings show that 84 respondents believe people are free to express opinion in Malaysia. This indicates a generally positive perception toward freedom of expression. Most of respondents appear to believe that individuals are able to voice opinions and participate in public discussion. This also suggests that freedom of expression is recognized as an important democratic right protected under the Federal Constitution. However, this existence and disagreement response shows that some of respondents still perceive limitation in real-life situations. This concern may be influenced by fear of criticism, social backlash, legal consequences, or sensitivity surrounding certain issues. Overall, Section 4 shows that freedom of expression is recognized by respondents, but it is still perceived to operate within informal social and political boundaries. Now we move to democracy and abuse of power. Question 6. Abuse of power as a threat to rights. Finally, 96 of respondents agree that abuse of power can threaten constitutional rights. This is one of the strongest and the most consistent findings in the entire study. It reflects very high level of awareness that misuse of authority can directly weaken justice, equality, and constitutional protection. The finding also shows that respondents strongly connect and good governance with accountability, transparency, and check and balance. In other words, students understand that constitutional rights alone are not enough. Without responsible governance and institutional accountability, those rights can still become vulnerable to abuse. Overall, respondents demonstrate strong critical awareness regarding democracy, governance, and the importance of protecting rights from the abuse of power.
Thank you Amir Zafri and Muhammad Shaisan for all the findings that we have discussed. And now we will moving forward to the strengths, weaknesses and also recommendations. And now Adam Zazan will continue.
Thank you, Sebastian. I will now present the overall strength, weaknesses and recommendation based on the findings of these studies. First, strength of the studies. One, the main strength of the study is the consistently high level of constitutional awareness among respondents. Across multiple findings, most students demonstrate strong understanding of fundamental rights such as equality, freedom of speech, and democratic principles. This indicates the respondents had a solid basic awareness, which improve the reliability of the overall responses. Second, the study achieved a balanced gender distribution with equal representation of male and female respondents. This reduced gender bias and ensured that the findings are not dominated by one gender perspective. Third, respondents came from different academic backgrounds, including COB, CAS, and Colgis. This diversity allows the studies to capture different perspectives on constitutional right from various fields of study, making the analysis more comprehensive. Now, continue with the weaknesses of the study. First, the study has an uneven ethnic distribution with a large majority of Malay respondents. This limits the generalist ability of the findings, as minority perspective may not be fully represented. Second, the study relies on self-report data which may not fully reflect actual knowledge. Respondents may overestimate their understanding of constitutional right, leading to possible response bias. And lastly, some respondents show hesitation when answering questions related to political or sensitive issue. This may affect the accuracy of responses, as students may avoid expressing strong opinions due to social and political sensitivity. And I will continue to the recommendation. First, improve ethnic representation. Future research should use more balanced sampling method to ensure equal representation across different ethnic groups in Malaysia. This will improve the accuracy and inclusiveness of the findings. Second, use objective knowledge testing, which future study should combine surveys with objective assessment such as knowledge-based question or case scenarios. This helps reduce reliance on self-report perception and improve data accuracy. And lastly, encourage safe discussion space. Universities should promote safe and open academic environments for discussing sensitive topics such as politics, governance, and rights. This will encourage more honest response and improve critical thinking among students. Overall, this strengthen weaknesses and recommendation highlight both the positive outcomes and the areas that need improvement in understanding constitutional rights among students.
Thank you, Adam Nazahan, and thank you all panelists. And after this, we will continue for the Q&A sessions. So don't go anywhere. Hi, welcome back to Batik Cast, and we will now proceed to the Q&A sessions, where the several critical questions related to our study will be discussed by our panel members. Our first questions: since this study mainly use self-reported questionnaire, how can we be sure that respondents truly understand constitutional rights instead of simply believing that they understand them? I would like to invite Amir Zafri to answer these questions.
Thank you, Sebastian. That is an important limitation within the studies. Self-reported data measure perceived understanding rather than objectively verified knowledge. This means respondents may feel confidence but constitutional concept, even if their actual understanding remain limited or superficial. For example, many respondents recognize freedom of speech as a constitutional right, but this does not necessarily means they fully understand its legal scope, restrictions, or constitutional interpretations. Because of that, future research should combine survey with objective assessments such as constitutional case analysis, legal scenario questions, or knowledge-based testing. This would help us distinguish between general awareness and genuine constitutional literacy more accurately.
Alright, thank you Ahmed Zafri. And our second question is relates to the demographic representations. So since 75% of respondent is from Malay students, which is 70 respondents, and does this affects the generalist ability of the findings, especially in the multicultural society like Malaysia? So Shaisan, you may explain more about this.
Alright, thank you Sebastian. Yes, the ethnic imbalance is one of the main weaknesses identified in the study. Malaysia is a multicultural country and different ethnic communities may experience constitutional rights, equality and freedom differently based on historical, cultural and social factors. When one ethnic group dominates the sample, the finding may unintentionally reflect majority perspective more strongly and than minority experience. For example, perceptions toward equality, freedom of religion, or institutional trust may vary across communities. Therefore, future studies should use one more balanced sampling methods to ensure stronger representation from Chinese, Indian, Sabah and Sarawak Bumiputra, and other minority groups. This would improve inclusiveness and produce findings that better reflect Malaysia's social diversity.
Alright, thank you Shaisan. And our third question is to address an interesting contradiction found in the study. Respondents show high trust in legal institutions, but at the same time, many also believe that sensitive issues still limit freedom of expressions. So how can both perceptions exist in the same time? I would like to give Adam Nazahan to explain more about this.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. This reflects the complexity of constitutional rights within real social environment. Respondents may trust institutions such as courts and legal system in principle, but still believe that practical expression is influenced by social sensitivity and political realities. In other words, students may believe the legal framework exists to protect rights, while simultaneously feeling that some topics remain socially difficult or risky to discuss openly. Issues involving race, religion, royalty, and politics are often viewed as highly sensitive within Malaysian society. So, the contradiction does not necessarily mean respondents distrust the Constitution. Instead, it suggests the constitutional freedom is perceived to operate within legal boundaries and informal social pressure.
Thank you, Adam. And our fourth question is focused on media influence. How do media and social media shape students' understanding on the constitutional rights and freedom of expressions? Ahmed Zafri, please continue.
Thank you, Sebastian. Media and social media play a major role in shaping constitutional awareness among youth today. Many respondents are likely exposed to discussions about freedom of speech, equality, political issues and governance through online platforms rather than formal legal education alone. This increased awareness and exposure to the democratic discussions. However, social media can also simplify complex constitutional issues into the emotional or polarized narrative. As a result, students may develop broad awareness of right without the fully understanding the legal context behind those rights. This is why media literacy and critical thinking are increasingly important of strengthening constitutional understanding among young people. Thank you.
Alright, thank you Amir Zafri. And now, our final questions, which is focused on the role of youth. Based on the finding, how important is civic engagement in strengthening constitutional awareness among university students? Shaisan, you may respond.
Thank you, Sebastian. My answer is civic engagement is extremely important because awareness alone are not enough to strengthen democracy. Students may understand constitutional concept theoretically, but without active participation, their understanding may remain passive. Activities such as debates, forum, public discussion and civic program help students connect constitutional theory with real societal issues. This also encourages critical thinking, democratic participation, and stronger awareness of accountability and governance. In the long term, stronger civic engagement can help produce more informed, responsible, and constitutional aware citizens.
Alright, thank you for all panelists, and that is all for our presentations. Thank you.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.